Today we're talking about stablecoin yields. Why? Because I think they're the most accessible thing for non-DeFi natives to sort of wrap their head around and even get excited about. And they're kind of risk adjusted. We've seen some stablecoins blow up in the past, like UST, but the days of algorithmic stablecoins are over. And now most stablecoins are either fully collateralized or over collateralized. And so we're going to look at some of these and some of the yields you can expect in DeFi utilizing stablecoins. And well, you'll see how they compare to TradFi. And TradFi, I think a traditional stablecoin yield, or rather a yield on a dollar, you're looking at anywhere between 0.5% in a savings account in a bank to maybe 5 to 7% if you're really lucky on a T-bill. So a little bit different on chain. Let's dive into it. And if you are a DeFi native, I will try to show you some of the best, more strategic yields towards the end of this video. So first, we'll start off with something pretty simple, like actually, let's start super simple. Let's go with SuperForm. So SuperForm is a protocol that's made by actually a really intelligent team. They have created new vault standards. They've really helped develop the Ethereum ecosystem. And what they've built here with Super USDC is, we call it a vault, but you can think of it as a structured investment product where you deposit your stablecoins. Again, stablecoins are just tokenized dollars into this here by clicking the deposit button, assuming that you know how to set up a wallet. And once you've done that, you are getting 14% AP. Is it APR or APY here? I believe this is APR, but it also doesn't auto compound, so it doesn't really matter. It could be considered APY, but you're going to get 14% annualized. And so 14% is fantastic. What is this doing? How is it making that yield? They do say in DeFi, if you don't know how the yield is made, you are the yield, which is a way of saying, be careful of traps and tricks in this space. This is not a trap. This is not a trick. The way this is earning yield is by lending out the stablecoins you deposit to places like Aave, Euler, Fluid, and Morpho, which are all borrowing and lending protocols that pay an interest rate for lent assets. So you are depositing into SuperForm. They are optimizing your lending yield by depositing into these 4 different places and returning like 98% of that yield back to you, the depositor. Very simple, super easy, and you also get cred. Cred is points. Points may one day be valuable. It may entitle you to an airdrop. And again, I really like the SuperForm team. I think this is a great way to farm those cred while also getting a stablecoin yield. Super USDC, for those who are a little bit more advanced, also does have some degree of composability. And if you wanted to sort of get a fixed rate yield on a Super USDC and not be exposed to the volatility, you can go to Spectra. They do have Super USDC over here. So this is SuperForm's USDC. You can get a fixed APR of 30%. So you're giving up the points here, but you're getting a fixed date of 30%, but very low levels of liquidity. So if you come over here and try to deposit into this fixed rate yield, you're probably not going to get a good rate so at $10,000 deposited, the fixed date goes from 30% down to 22%. Liquidity is really important when dealing with PTs. I'll briefly talk about that, but it's a bit more advanced. It's a fun stablecoin yield opportunity in general, but it does take a little bit more advanced knowledge. So that's SuperForm. Let's move over to another very simple, just vault sort of lending product for stablecoins. This is Syrup. They work with the Maple team to effectively lend assets to whitelisted debtors or creditors. I'm not even sure which I use their borrowers, right? So you have borrowers who are whitelisted and also over collateralized. So these are not under collateralized loans. These are interestingly fully and over collateralized loans, typically on rolling terms. So you can see here are all the loans going out against all these different collaterals, and here are the collateral levels. These are dramatically over collateralized in most cases, except for some like SUSDS, but that's a very small loan, so not really a big issue. So there you go, right? The entire thing is over collateralized by 1.8x. So for every $1 being lent, there is $1.8 of collateral, which is great. That's what you like to see. And altogether, it is generating roughly a 13% APR for lenders, which is really nice. Plus, you're getting, again, points. So like SuperForm had creds. In this case, with Syrup, you have drips, and drips entitle you to sort of seasonal Syrup We call them emissions or airdrops or, yield drops, but you get a bit more money, right? You get tokens at the end of every season. Each season, I think, is a few months long. Maybe it's 1 month long. I'm not entirely sure, but you will get additional yield. So the base yield is roughly 13%, between 12.5 and 14%, depending on if you deposit USDT, which is Tether's stablecoin, or USDC, which is Coinbase's or Circle's stablecoin. And then on top of that, you can get like an average of 7%. So that's pretty cool. You can also do the same thing you did with Spectra with, fixed rate, fixed date on the SuperForm one. You can also get fixed rate, fixed date on Syrup on Pendle. So if you went over here, so this is Pendle, one of my favorite protocols, if not my actual favorite protocol. Go to stablecoins and you just get sort of a menagerie of phenomenal fixed rate, fixed date stablecoin yields. These are just like bonds, so they mature at 1 and you buy them at a discount. So maybe it's like buying $1 for 80 cents, and then then you get that dollar in like a few months, right? So you made a 20% ROI, but you had to wait, 76 days or whatever it was. So down here, you can see that they are pricing this at 14% fixed rate, fixed date. So you could do the variable yield on Syrup, or you could choose to have the fixed rate, fixed date version of this at 14.72%. Really up to you. Very easy to deposit in either. So here you just connect your wallet, deposit, and you're good to go. You're making a yield of between 13 to 20% depending on the emissions. Or you can go over to Pendle, click on very simple. The way this works is, very, very basic. So let's say you have USDC and you have $100, right? And you want to deposit it for this opportunity. What you'll get is 102.855. And what that means, what it's showing you, is that you will get a 2.855% ROI in 76 days. Annualized, it'll be 14.72%. So very easy to see what your return will be. And the cool thing is, let's just say you have $100,000, probably a kind of illiquid market, but here you would have a $2,781 return. So 2.781% ROI in 76 days. Now, might not seem like much, but for those of you in TradFi always searching for yields on the dollar, this is a pretty good return and has a very, very good team backing it. So Syrup, again, is the Maple team. Maple is one of the biggest lenders to TradFi institutions or really big institutions in crypto. So good team. And then Pendle, of course, has billions of dollars of TVL. It's a very trusted protocol. So anyways, there's that, kind of like that. Let's move a little bit up the curve. So if we're looking for something a bit more fun, let's go, well, this actually isn't up the risk curve, but it is up the yield curve. So here we have a staking FXUSD. So FXUSD is a stablecoin made by the F of X team. Yields over here, 33 to 35% APR, which is really nice. This is for the stability pool gauge. This effectively helps liquidate the leveragers in dire straits and also to maintain the stability of the FXUSD token, which is pretty cool. And the current APR is roughly 36%. If you want to maximize that, you can go over to fx.convexfinance.com because they get additional APRs. Why is that? Really, it comes down to V tokenomics. All you need to know is that if you lock and hold extra FXN token or VFXN, you get a boost, but there are things called liquid lockers like Convex, which gets the boost for you, and you can deposit into that protocol and get the boost without having to hold any VFXN. So there you go, 35% APR. It's a phenomenal yield. There's $11.2 million of TVL in there already. So, couple $1,000, few $100,000, and you're not going to dilute that. I will say some of these yields are inflated because of last weekend's crazy volatility, and you shouldn't expect to, always get 35% APR, but I think around 20%, 26% is reasonable for the FXUSD stability pool. So that's kind of cool. This is a nice one. I like F of X. Now let's look at another stability pool, Liquity. So Liquity is one of the oldest apps in DeFi, really. They created LUSD a long time ago where you could mint, which means to issue LUSD against Ethereum collateral. So it would take ETH collateral and then it would allow you to issue a stablecoin against it. So it was always an over collateralized stablecoin. It's kind of cool. Now, this model has been copied over and over and over again. Liquity, probably one of the most forked protocols ever. Liquity V2, probably also going to be one of the most forked protocols. And it has a stability pool. The stability pool maintains a peg. So if the collateral gets within liquidation region or dangers, then what happens is the stablecoins will purchase the collateral at a discount. That'll go to the stability pool stakers, and they will have purchased at a discount and, hopefully have made a profit there. Now, if you want to participate in this, you go over to Earn. The Earn product, you can see here, the APR is currently, 4%, maybe 5%, 7%. But the 7-day APRs are really high because we had some crazy volatility in the past few days. So 7-day APR, 51%, 430%. There was a massive amount of liquidations on Sunday when things went crazy. And then, a conservative 15% here. I will also say, though, that these yields are not including the potential airdrops we're going to see from all of the Liquity V2 forks, which are estimated to give between 1 to 4% of their FDV to Bold users. So here you would deposit Bold. Bold is a stable coin of Liquity V2 into these stability pools, qualify for future airdrops while also getting a cool yield, between 4 and 432% on any given day. Really, these positions are more like fishing for a black swan. So they do low yields most of the time. You're probably going to get 10%, maybe 20% on a good day. Some days you'll even get 30%. But then on a crazy volatile day with a huge wick, black swan events, you might get a 5% ROI in one day. So really, these are just it's almost like a hedge against black swans. If you have stable coins and you want to take a long bet that there's going to be a black swan sometime during the year, and there always is a black swan, DeFi is kind of like a black swan pool or a black swan lake, then this is a great way to do that, right? You deposit your stable coins, you're getting a conservative APR for most of the year, and then some rare events, probably 2 to 3 times, maybe even 5 times a year, you're going to get a really nice payout from liquidation. So that's one cool way to think about Liquity. Love that team. They're going to have a lot of forks. The forks are also probably going to give airdrops to the Bold users. It's going to give you an additional APR, additional yield, maybe some exposure to some cool ecosystems like Bearchain and Hyperliquid. But that's Liquity. Definitely like that team over there. Now, you can also just do vanilla lending. If you want to just lend some stable coins on your own, you can. 8.2% USDC, 8.5% here. These are decent. Typically I go for 20% or higher for stable coins. But if you want to lend on Gearbox at 8%, that's pretty good. Gearbox has some more fancy strategies though. So now we're going to get to some of the strategies that I would not recommend for newer users, but would definitely say are worth checking out for more advanced users. If you go over to Gearbox and look at stables, you will see some pretty high APRs. Why? Well, because the lending rate for some of these is pretty low, 4% low, and the yield is pretty high, 8 to 10% high. So here we have the Sky rewards rate and Sky savings rate leveraged against some underlying stablecoin, capable of getting you 75 to 65% APR. I like these a lot, and these have been up here for a while. I haven't seen them. I have not seen them under 50% for weeks. So people have already made multiple percentages of ROI in that time. Congratulations to them. And let's take a look. So here we have the Sky rewards rate, which basically is the Sky emissions. So instead of staking your USDF for the Sky savings rate, which is, a basket of paper and treasury bill yields, you are staking it and giving up that yield for Sky emissions. So that's a 65% APR at max leverage. The Sky savings rate, probably a better yield altogether, is 75%. So we're going to click on that one. Let's say, do I have any stable coins to show you this with? No, not really. Let's say I deposited $10,000 of USDT. I was fine at 9x leverage, not the max leverage, by the way. You could go farther, and you're borrowing something. This one's not going to show me the yield, unfortunately. UI is bugging out a little bit. Let's check out the Sky rewards rate, see if this one will work for us. Sometimes user interfaces don't work. What are you going to do? Looks like this user interface is not working today. These APYs are derived from. Bummer. I wonder why. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It will definitely work if you are trying to borrow, but it looks like today it's not letting me do anything. It's just because it's not capped. I'm not sure what's going on here, but typically it would show you your estimated APR here. So let's try another one, see if we can get any of these to populate. Let's try Athena. So Athena, we're still getting nothing. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. Sometimes refreshing is what I call the magical button of DeFi, and it will fix all of your problems. What are the odds? Let's try that. Yes, there we go. Okay, so that fixed it. Like I said, if something is broken in DeFi, try refreshing. It may just fix the problem. So it did. So we're going to go over to stable again. And by the way, that doesn't mean it affects your actual yield. You would have gotten the real yield regardless. What you see is a front end for smart contracts. Smart contracts are like the on-chain financialized contracts that make everything work. Those are not affected by the front end. The front end is just a user interface for the smart contracts. So if the APR looks wonky or is off, that does not actually affect the smart contract. All right, so let's go back over to this one, which is the one I liked. Put in $10,000, leverage that up 9x. And you can see here, your overall APY would be 68%, which is fantastic. But of course, you are leveraging, so there are some additional risks. So we can check out the oracles. If you are leveraging, you should always know what you're doing. Oracles are very important here. It looks like we're using a Vault oracle, a bounded oracle, and then a Chainlink oracle. Because it's based on a Chainlink oracle, I would imagine it's not fundamental. I don't see any of these things saying that we're using fundamentals. Bounded, not really sure what bounded means here. We could click on it, but we're not getting anything opened. So this is probably a bespoke oracle. Do know that if there are any BPEGs, you could be affected by that. So, it is Sky, which is the team formerly known as Maker. Really good, really robust team. So I'm not terribly worried about it, but it's just good to know. Other concerns with leveraging stablecoins, leveraging like pairs, is that if the interest rates flip against you, so right now the bar rate is 4.88%, your yield is higher than that. So when you're leveraging that up, you're getting more and more and more yield. If the bar rate goes higher than the yield, you then start to lose money. You start to pay more than you make, and that can push up your debt to a liquidation threshold. So there are a lot of things you need to know about before you start getting into leverage. But if you do know about those things, this is a cool opportunity to consider. Now, speaking of leverage, Morpho actually has some fun things to do with stablecoins, like leverage SRUSD. SRUSD is reservoir. Reservoir has a stablecoin called RUSD. It is primarily backed actually by this position. They work with Stakehouse, which is one of the biggest curators in the space. They do a lot of tokenized yields, or I don't even know how to explain what Stakehouse does. They're similar to RE7 or MEV. They kind of make these like on-chain hedge fund type structured products that are highly risk adjusted and actually probably even have a decent legal framework around them. Anyways, if you go over to the Reservoir website, you can see sort of what is backing this yield. This is also going to change in the near future, but you should be aware. So if you click on reserves, you can see here that the yield backing RUSD, which has $100 million of assets, you have $2 million of USDC, which is fantastic. You have some tokenized T-bills, some tokenized basis trading. You have Stakehouse USDC, which is just lending USDC on various places, I think mostly on Morpho. And then Stakehouse RUSD, which is lending RUSD on Morpho to the SRUSD loop. So there does seem to be some sort of like looping is not really the right word there, but double dipping. However, this does not affect the actual backing, nor does it affect the peg, nor does it give any additional risks, nor does it introduce any additional circulating supply. Because what it's allowing Stakehouse to do is use Morpho as a minting mechanism for more RUSD that is over collateralized by SRUSD. So anytime SRUSD goes out of circulation into lending on Morpho, you can bring an RUSD into circulation by minting it from the Stake RUSD curator. So no funny business there, but I do look forward to when this portion of the backing is less significant, which I think is going to happen really soon because Reservoir is coming on the Bear chain. That's going to be huge. They're going to have some phenomenal yields over there, especially with Goldilocks, Barrelend. There's so many different Bear things over there, and Dolomite. So I highly anticipate that Reservoir is going to be very, very well positioned over on Bear Chain. And so check that out. Now, back over here. So in the world of points, there's so much going on. Points can be valuable. I think that the Reservoir points are probably going to be pretty valuable. The reason I say this is because I happen to know that they are aiming for 20 billion total points and a 10% FTV airdrop. So if we estimate right? A value of their FTV when they launch. And I actually built a calculator for this. I'll show you guys here in a second once I pull it up. I think this is it. Points, yep, okay. So if we look at this, then you can see, sort of get a rough estimate of what some of these points might be worth. So at $100 million, let's just say Reservoir launches and they have a FTV of $150 million. Why? Because their TVL was $100 million and there's a, FTV to TVL ratio of 1.5. Right? Okay. So if that is the case, then 1 point per dollar per day gives you an additional 27% APR, which is crazy. 2 points per dollar per day gives you 54% and 3 points per dollar per day, 82%. Now, what are these points? How do you get them? Just holding RUSD gets you 2 points per dollar per day, or per RUSD per day. Staked RUSD, SRUSD gets you 1 point per dollar per day. But you can loop that staked RUSD. Now, right now, you can loop it against RUSD, but that looping is going to end very soon. You won't be able to get the looped points. You will get the looped APR, but you won't get the looped points. However, they're opening a new stakehouse market where you can borrow USDC against staked RUSD. I anticipate the yield over there will probably be like 75 to 100% base plus the point per dollar per leverage. So I really do think it's going to be crazy potential APR, and that should come out in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be on Morpho, and you'll also be able to leverage that on Contango automatically. So again, we're getting into the zone where this is pretty complex stuff and not for people who are not DeFi natives. But if you haven't heard of Contango, Contango is an auto leveraging platform. So some of the things we were talking about earlier with leveraging some of these yields, looping some of these strategies, you could do it manually, deposit the collateral, borrow, convert that to more collateral, and just keep doing that over and over and over again to loop up your exposure to a yield. Contango does it for you, which is really nice. So if we go over to USD rates, I'm going to say, we want to invest at least $10,000 and we want at least a 20% APR, annualized return. And we can get rid of rewards since we don't really care about emissions. We want a base rate. You can see here that there are some 62% APRs, 55%, 52%, which are great and that can handle, a principal size between 60,000 and 300,000. This is principal, right? This is the principal you can put in here. And then leverage means you can put in this much principal and have this much leverage and still get this yield, which is pretty fantastic. So what it really means is there's 9 times 300,000. So what is that? $2.7 million to borrow, which is why you can have a $300,000 principal. And there are some really good ones here. The ones that I like are the ones that have just a ton of max amounts. The higher the max amount, the less dilutive you will be. So if you want to come in here with $100,000 and leverage up 9x, you're going to need a ton of liquidity in there, right? So you're looking for ones that have 1.9 million. This is better, but I don't really know if I want to be exposed to PT USDO++. You should know what you're getting into. And some stablecoins are not as good as others, in my opinion. So here, the SRUSD, RUSD, we just talked about this yield. You will get points. You will get a base yield of 28%, and potentially, another 25-ish% on that from the points on your principal once the changes come into effect. So 50%, right? And this can handle a lot of capital. So there are some great yields over here. Highly recommend Contango. Go check that out. And speaking of places to loop and leverage, I like Euler. So Euler, one of the biggest protocols of the last cycle, got to $200 million and then had a return this cycle and has broken last cycle. It has broken that record. It has also been probably one of the most audited protocols since its comeback. So it has come back sort of with a ferocity and with a high level of security consciousness. They have audited this thing out the wazoo. Some of the top auditors too. You have your Open Zeppelins and Code 4 Arena, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, if we go over to strategies here, and we're looking for stablecoins today. So we go over to collateral asset. Let's just make it a stablecoin. Debt asset. Let's make that a stablecoin. You can see here there are some crazy ROEs, which are yields. but you want to have a lot of liquidity, right? You really want to have markets that have quite a bit of liquidity, because if it doesn't, you can dilute it, you can affect it. And if you see the sparkly there, it's because the APR is going to be highly dependent upon like Royal. Royal is a token, so you're going to have token emissions or incentives. And me personally, I don't like to depend on token emissions. I would much rather depend on real, organic, intrinsic yield. And then if I get tokens on top, that makes me happy. So I look for ones that, have maybe don't have the sparkle or are less reliant on the sparkle. So, I know there are some markets here, for example, in the Resolve market, even the Tulipa market, where you can loop things like RLP against USR for 85% APR. And there's also points that you're getting for this that could push this over the top to 130, 140% APR. Now, RLP is not exactly a stablecoin. If you look at the chart of RLP, you'll see that while it does have a beautiful chart, sort of up and to the right, it does have some sort of down moments. Now, why is that? That's because this is a junior tranche for a stablecoin. And being a junior tranche for a stablecoin, it can sometimes absorb the risk that the stablecoin's underlying strategy would otherwise absorb. So it typically does do very well, but on some days, it can go negative. So if we look at the 30-day APR, 22%, that's fantastic. But recently, it's gone negative. Why is that? It's because USR or Resolve uses a basis trade for the underlying yield. And with that crash we saw on Sunday, funding rates actually flipped negative, if not for just a day, and threw a negative yield up on the board. So that's absorbed by RLP. USR remains unaffected. That's how junior and senior tranches work, if you're familiar with TradFi. And so you do see a bit of that effect baked into the chart here. But I anticipate this is going to be fine. I do think we're heading into more favorable winds in the near future here. So that's the bright side. If you don't want to be exposed to something like RLP, you can also just do the PT wrap staked USR. Now, again, this is really for the more complex strategist here who knows how to use PT assets. Basically, you are going on Pendle, which we mentioned before. You will be going and getting that wrap stake USR asset. So here it is, boom, going to the buying it. Again, this is like buying a bond. Once you purchase the bond, and you can buy this with your basic USDC if you want. You don't have to get USR first. Let's say $10,000. And the cool thing is here, what are you going to get? You're going to get $10,400. So you already are locking in a $450 profit in 76 days. That's the really cool part. You can then take the receipt for that. So the receipt is called the PT USR. You take that PT token, this is PT USR. You want PT wrap staked USR, not on base chain, but on Ethereum. So let's take away base chain and find that wrap staked USR. Here it is. All right, so it's 17% fixed. Same deal though. You buy the PT with whatever asset you want, take that PT, take it over to Euler, and then use that as your collateral, get more USDC against it, and you can loop and leverage that up. Now, you can do this all in one click on Euler, which makes it really nice. Just by clicking multiply, you can see here you can go up to almost 10x, a 9.9x multiplier. And so here you will be getting an APR in real yield that's probably somewhere around 80, 78%. Plus, so here's your supply APY, intrinsic almost entirely, and then you're borrowing it at 18.4%. So the supply APY actually looks a little bit high. Why is that so high? Intrinsic APY is actually 17%. So maybe this isn't right. 27th of March USDC, if I go over to Pendle, I am seeing 17%. So fascinating. Maybe this leverage wouldn't be that good. You should always check on all the metrics to make sure you're getting what you're getting. So if you purchase this now, you're actually only going to get a 17% APR, which would render this leverage loop negative. So definitely know what you're doing before you get in. This API is not giving you correct data. Like I said, DeFi is not for the faint of heart, and you really have to know what you're doing. I do this all day, every day, nonstop, and I'm able to see those things really quickly. Whereas, people who are just following what I'm saying might not notice those things and get wrecked. So if that's you, if you're just trying to find a good strategy and you have no idea what you're doing, I would stick with things like Syrup. I would stick with things like SuperForm, where you just set it and forget it. In fact, there's even another one that you might like on Etherfi. It's a set and forget vault. It's doing around 20%. It's another one of those good sort of, you don't have to know what you're doing. You just, let someone else deal with it and it does pretty good. So that's like market neutral USD is a good one, but also ultra yield stablecoin at 17%, so or 12%. So there's a 12% vault here. There's a 13% vault here. You know, when you're doing a set it and forget it and let someone else take care of it strategy, those are kind of the yields you're dealing with. Of course, Pendle has set and forget PTs. You just buy the PT and wait till expiry, and you're going to get 20%, 23%, 24% in some cases. Could even be better, right? And then you have no real custody risk. So with Etherfi, whom I love, by the way, which does a fantastic job, and if you participate in these, you're also going to get a whole bunch of points. There is some degree of trust of the custodian. So if you're dealing with like the ultra yield stablecoin vault, you are, I think, dealing with Edge. No, ultra yield. They're kind of running the strategy on the back end, and they're a fantastic strategist, but you are exposed to them. Whereas with Pendle, if you're just purchasing the PT, it's just buying a bond, right? You have a counterparty who wants to buy the yield. You're buying the fixed rate. You're buying a fixed rate, and they're purchasing your rights to the volatile rate. It's sort of how it works. So there is a counterparty. It's someone else wants the other side of this trade. You're getting a fixed rate. They're getting a volatile rate. Everyone's happy. So it's fantastic. I really, really like Pendle, but Pendle's not for everyone, and it can be kind of overwhelming the first time you use it. But once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. You're just buying the PT and waiting 48 days, right? Very, very straightforward, very simple. So those are most of the products that I like right now. Now, there are some other products on Spectra that are decent, but the liquidity is very thin. So they also have a USR market. This is pretty thick liquidity, USR 28% fixed rate, fixed date, but it's only got like a few more weeks left, 15 days. So you can get 28% 15 days, but really, if you're looking for something a little bit longer, Pendle's probably where you're going to end up going. I will say, sort of finally, there is RateX if you're on Solana. So if you are on Solana and you are looking for a fixed rate, fixed date yield over there, RateX has that. So RateX is effectively a Pendle-like protocol on Solana. Solana yields are pretty fickle. It's hard to find a good stablecoin yield over there. You can lend on Camino. I think that's a great way to get yield. You'll probably get around 8% APR. So nothing crazy. You'll definitely get better yields on EVM for stablecoins. But if you are looking for a good stablecoin yield on Solana, RateX has fixed rate, fixed date, 19% for the next 50 days. So that's good. I like that. If we just click stables here, you can see what they have. They have these two at for the next 50 days at roughly 19%, 18.5%, and then one for 142 days at 18%. These are good. They might not have a ton of liquidity because RateX is a relatively new protocol, but on top of participating in this and getting that fixed rate, you're also going to get RateX points. RateX has not launched a token yet, so these points will probably entitle you to an airdrop in the future, and I think there's a chance that RateX becomes the rate swapping hegemon on Solana, which positions them pretty well for a favorable valuation. So these points could be worth something in the future. So I am farming these points as well. You can sort of see I have some points over here, and I do think it could be worth looking into. So, in short, I hope that if you're watching this and you're a new to DeFi, decentralized finance, and you're trying to figure out why are people playing with this? Why are people spinning up these wallets and playing with what seems like video games on a computer for money? There are some ways to just make your dollars grow, right? So there are complicated strategies, which you probably want to avoid until you understand better. And then there are very simple set and forget strategies like, the F of X stability pool, like the Liquity pool, which I really like Pendle pools, like the Syrup pool, like the SuperForm pool, all of these ones which are hands off. You're not leveraging anything. There's no liquidation risks. And then there's the crazy sort of fun strategies for people who have been in this space for a really long time and sort of want to go balls to the wall, max leverage, max yield. They're very dynamic. They're probably monitoring their positions all day long. So lots of types of people. There's something for everyone. And really, if you're comparing this to your 0.5% yield on your savings account, it's no contest. And when you're in DeFi, you control your money. No one can seize it. No one can freeze it. It is yours. A bank can't tell you you can't take it out. You are literally holding it. You're just holding it in your non-custodial wallet with fully backed assets. So that's all. Hopefully this was useful for some of the newer users. If you want to learn even more at a more basic level, I do recommend following people like Patrick from Dynamo DeFi. I think if you type in Dynamo DeFi on YouTube, he'll probably pop up. He does really good intro tutorials. I'm a little bit more like middle to advanced, and this is probably my most basic video I've done in a long time. And it's, I imagine it's not super simple for the basic user. If you want to just find a community of people who are constantly talking about these yields, looking for the best ones, risk analyzing them and trying to understand them at a deep level, join the DeFi Dojo. There's a link in the description. There's a WAP link that'll get you in there. And I mean, literally 24/7, we are talking about yields, looking for the best ones, and it's a blast. And you will grow and learn the fastest in that place than anywhere else, I think, in crypto. So that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Do know that I am an ambassador for a lot of these protocols, so I have like a bias to talk about them. I do like them. That's why I'm an ambassador for them. But there is some level of compensation for me to be thinking about them and talking about them. So there is that full disclaimer. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.